There must also be an old world order, which is very important to understand the new world order. The old world order was the feudal aristocratic system of kings, queens, dukes, counts and earls, whose property we were. They took our women in the prime noctus, or first rite on the first wedding night, and forced our women to sleep with the lord to spread their pharaonic genetics. They owned all the land, all the cattle, and had all the power, being enforced by their knights, who are now the police and the Blue Octagon Army. So you think they just left it all and just vanished? No. It was this old world order which became the new world order, because the aristocracy were having too many internal wars, while all of them wanted to be king or lord of the castle, and there were more and more of them. So it was decided that any one of them could be the king for a period of 4 years, elected by their slaves, the demos in Greek. And so democracy was born. And because there were too many uprisings and revolutions going on, they decided to become invisible and hide in secret Freemason lodges, being the reason that Freemasons are still attracted to swords, castles, ancient rituals and pharaonic symbols. Especially communism and the Russian Revolution became a real threat to them, killing all the royals and tsars. This is why in fact a counterpart had to be invented to defeat the threat, Nazism. And over these two, they had the Western world and privileged capitalism of their financial elite to finally defeat both communism and Nazism. And now they just smile and say, have a nice day. Next to this, there's also the highly organized Templars of Octagon and their base Switzerland, where all the money is. The Templars were like young, wild, revolutionary aristocrats, rebels-like, who had to fight for their kingdom, as they were only second or third sons, who therefore had no rights, and it was they who finally came up with the idea of democracy and Freemasonry, thus putting the old monarchies and the French king Philippe le Bel in rage, because he didn't want to give up his kingdom to the new system of the new world order, where all these pharaohs could have a chance. So the Templars founded Switzerland, taking their Templars' treasure with them. And today we still belong to them as their slaves, and that is why we have a passport or ID with a number on it, being our registered slave number of the aristocracy, which we have to show every time their police knight of Octagon commands us to control the flock. Not even the passport itself belongs to us, but it's the property of the state and aristocracy. Neither our children belong to us, they are the property of the state, whom they can take away from us whenever they please, as being their future flock of slave stock. They can arrest you whenever they want, they can put you in prison whenever they please. This is what I had to find out in Octagon, Switzerland, that we are their property, who can steer our lives through terror, lies and injustice. Look, there's even the coat of arms on it of the ones whose property you are. The king. The pharaoh. Well, there he is, King George VI and the Freemason, as I told you, who set Mr. Winston Churchill, the aristocratic warmonger and mass murderer who started World War II. He set him in place. He was not elected by the people. And every American president has one British king as their ancestor. So the pharaohs became the aristocracy. And the aristocracy became Freemasonry, ruling through the system of democratorship, where we, the sheeple, can vote for one of them out of a bunch of other pharaohs. It says in the Bible that the pharaoh and his army disappeared in the sea. They disappeared in the sea of peoples and are amongst us. In Pharaonic means pregnant, and Ri means the son, as in the word aristocracy, meaning the son gave birth to them. They came from elsewhere. This is why the aristocratic-led Nazis came up with the word Aryan, Arish, Aryan, as in aristocratic. Look, here we can see it. This is the King of England. There he is, Freemason. They all are. That's how they control us today. Nice, isn't it? We are just their slaves, as we've always been. Now they're hiding. In the Middle Ages, we were owned by kings and queens, earls and counts, barons and lords, tsars, dukes, duchesses, countesses, baronesses, archdukes, who had their knights and templars working as their police force for them to control the sheeple. Just as it is today, nothing has really changed. Or does anyone think they just disappeared like that? They were parasiting on the people and the workers who had to give taxes and percentage of wheat, vegetables and cattle. And many times the sheeple starved to death in winter after a bad harvest. While these parasites and pharaohs were partying in the castle, drunk of the wine they had stolen, their bellies well fed, with robbed food that should have been for all those hungry children. And they had their beds warmed up with young virgins of the sheeple due to the prime noctus, droit de cuissage, droit du seigneur or first right, allowing these parasites to grab the newly-wed bride on the very night of her wedding to come and lay with the Lord and Master, thus spreading the pharaonic genetics all over. Yes, the word pharaoh etymologically derives from two demotic words, per and a, meaning the big house. The big royal house of the pharaonic royal bloodline. As my dear friend William Morgan, 1776, so cleverly discovered that Genesis actually means the gene of Isis, and Geneva in the octagon base, gene of Eve, being one and the same one. I'm so glad my pupils are getting smarter than me, so I can retire soon. Just as the pharaohs never disappeared, the nobility never lost their power either. The word aristocracy is pharaonic, aristocracy. A means big or pregnant, and ri means the son, meaning those who come from the sun. Just as the Aryans, the Indo-Germanic nobility and upper class, Aryan is from Arion, as in aristocracy, which means that those who came from the sun with their blue blood and all their ruling, and they still do. Don't be mistaken. And here at this royal ball, well, we can see the pharaoh here. So, that's where they came from. It's the same. It's just the same. And today, children disappear and they get raped, tortured, sacrificed and murdered in castles like Amérois in Belgium and Sautou in Luxembourg and many other places as the Bohemian Grove by very organized gangs like the Dutroux gang and by Fournier, whose name indicates to deliver the king, fournir un roi, without children in this case. The nobility always were into Satanism and other dark mystical practices of their pharaonic ancestors as ritual child sacrifice. They always did and they always will, protected by their knights, police and authorities. In the 18th century there was Marquis de Sade, where the word sadism actually comes from. So I don't have to tell you what his favourite pastime hobbies were about. Napoleon Bonaparte finally put him in prison for 10 years after his arrest in 1801, and he died in 1814. Prince Charles publicly admitted in 2011 that he's a descendant of the Prince of Wallachia, or Vlad Dracul, the Impaler of Transylvania, as we know him. He lived from 1431 till 1476, and his favourite hobbies were torture and impaling. Impaling means having implanted a stick up yours, coming up from the mouth and then set up in the ground vertically, being his interpretation of a crucifixion. Well, look at the 8-pointed star on his forehead. That's octagon, right? Nobility. He did this to 100,000 people, mostly Saxons, and even the Ottoman Muslim army turned around and went back when they came to a forest of 20,000 impaled. From 1730 to 1801 we had the Russian nobility under the Tsar with Darya Nikolaevna Saltykova, torturing and murdering at least 200 people. This is the nobility, folks. They always did it, and they never stopped doing it. From 1560 to 1614, Countess Erzsébet Báthory of the Hungarian nobility, also called the Blood Countess, tortured and murdered 650 virgins of the Sheeple. Because she believed that bathing in a virgin's blood would keep her young forever, she and her fellow aristocrats even constructed an ingenious metal structure in which the victims could bleed to death, still being alive and sadistically tortured on the way. So this is the coat of arms of the royal Báthory, of the Blood Countess. Ex-President Sarkozy of France comes from the Hungarian aristocracy, being related to the Blood Countess, as the Pharaonic part Tsar in his name means king in Demotic. And this is the Blood Castle, where she was imprisoned in 1610, only because the Sheeple started an uprising after 650 of their virgins disappeared. So it took the Sheeple 650 victims to act. How typical. The American Sheeple even need more. 3,000 victims sacrificed at 9/11 for another liquid, and still counting. The Americans act big, martial and Spartanic at the shooting range with the best goodies you can imagine, waiting though to be hauled up for the slaughterhouse without ever having used their goodies. And watch here, we can see the airplane going through concrete and steel and coming out on the other side intact, as if nothing has happened. Oh, they made a big mistake here. Baron Judelet was an aristocratic French serial killer who lived from 1404 to 1440, who sodomized, tortured and murdered at least 600 boys and girls from the age of 6 to 18, together with his accomplices Poitou and Henriet. He used to laugh seeing his victims dying while he opened up their stomachs, admiring their intestines, a thing he was fascinated with. And look at this. This is his seal of his royal house of Durée, and here we can see the Templar's cross just on the Swiss Army knife, the same. And this is just the tip of the iceberg, because most cases are not known, because the Sheeple and stupid white race couldn't even read or write to document it all. So, the two parasites in society were, and still are, the aristocracy and the ecclesiastical orders of the priests of Amun, who never worked and always lived of the blood of others, in some cases even literally. Over the years and centuries, these parasites grew fat, never hungered, having great parties with music and troubadour, and just reproducing like rabbits in between the parties. And all descendants wanted to be king or queen and have the castles. So wars broke out between them, which the sheeple had to fight out. Nice haircut. Oh, what a legs. And what a nice shoes. And once a king, he wanted to stay king forever, and then even handed over to his pedigree. So rivalry started, and after hundreds of years, wars between the kingdoms and second son aristocracy, as the Templars, etc., they finally came together and decided to elect a king by the stupid sheeple for 4 years only. And so democracy started. And due to the increasing revolts, revolutions and uprisings of hungry peasants, the parasites of the nobility decided to go underground in Freemason lodges, divided in 33 degrees, indicating in fact the degree of pharaonic genes of the noble bloodlines in their veins. That's why Bernhard, the SS Prince of Darkness, founded the Bilderberger, who stand, due to their pure pharaonic blood, even over the usual 33 degrees of pharaonic percentage. It's like a bottle of whiskey, you know, like having 33 degrees of alcohol in it. They have 33 degrees of pharaonic genetics. And don't think that Kate Middleton, Cosima, and the girls of the so-called civil marriages with the nobility don't have a certain degree of pharaonic bloodline in their veins. They all have. There are just so many of them nowadays hiding amongst us and all trying to get a key position with the authorities where they can parasite on humanity without working a single day. So the pharaohs never went away. They became the aristocracy and the nobility. And the nobility never lost power and they never really went away. They rule through their politicians and Freemason lodges. So it's still the pharaohs ruling. I've been telling you for years. All the politicians are descendants of the nobility and aristocracy of the Middle Ages who went into hiding modes in Freemason lodges. That's why they want more and more police, because there are more and more of them who want to be a knight and do nothing. They protect child molesters and could stop drugs and prostitution within 24 hours. But it is them as well, earning money with organized crime at the expense of our children. Here you can see the drug dealers all hanging around in Bern next to the police station where they feel the most safe. I filmed this in 2011 with a mini DV, so the quality is not that good. I would like to do it again, but I can't go out alone, and especially in the evening or in the night. They're selling all these drugs to our children and the police is doing absolutely nothing. Instead of that, they terrorize me and my family, and they terrorize innocent, defenseless families and come with a terrorist police. Can you imagine? While they're doing nothing here. There they are, they all, and later on they even aggressed us. Because they saw I was filming. We had to get out very, very quickly. They came, you know. They hit on the car. I was with a guy, a German bloke.